Travis Garrison had earned his moniker. His team, noticing that he could spot an enemy from a mile away, had coined it while they were deployed in Iraq together. When Travis was finally back in his home on American soil, the instincts that had saved him and others in Iraq immediately kicked in. Something was wrong. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. Back in the stifling heat of the Iraqi desert, all Travis could think about was going home. He hated what his life had become over the last year, and he hated everything about being in the desert. But he knew it was his duty. He had to serve his country, just like his father had before he was born. Although he knew he was doing his dad and country proud, he couldn't concentrate. All he could think about was Casey. It was hard to imagine that he had said goodbye to his wife more than a year ago. He turned around one last time and waved at her as he left her on the tarmac. Casey was frightened, and her eyes were full of tears. But it wasn't just Casey. All the army wives were terrified of what would happen to their husbands and worried that they wouldn't make it back home. It was emotional for everyone, but there had been no choice. Travis knew that his country needed him, and he would do everything in his power to protect it. Although he always put on a strong front, his heart ached underneath the veneer. He longed for his wife and family. Writing letters to her made it more bearable, but it couldn't replace his wife's physical presence. Travis could see his peers taking strain around him for the same reasons. Everyone there was aching for their home. They took solace in the fact that their time in the scorching desert was almost over. Travis and the other people defending their country were ecstatic that it would all end soon. They all excitedly discussed what they wanted to do when they arrived back home. Travis just wanted two things. He wanted a big hug from his beloved wife, and he wanted to eat a massive all-American hamburger. But there was a terrible weight on Travis' heart. He tried to believe that everything was all right, but he hadn't received any letters from his wife for the last 3 months. Although he did get letters from his mother, Travis was concerned about Casey. He couldn't stand the feeling of not knowing what was going on. He planned to find out as soon as the plane landed. Travis couldn't stop worrying about why his wife had stopped writing to him. He tried to rationalize it, thinking that maybe she was just busy at her job. But surely she missed him as much as he missed her. He could only hope and pray that everything was okay. His mother hadn't mentioned anything that would explain his wife's behavior in her letters, so she must be okay. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop something from gnawing at him. One evening, completely out of the blue, he was playing a game of cards with his teammates when he received a phone call. Rushing over, he took it and almost burst into tears when he heard who was on the other end of the line. "Casey? How are you?" he cried. "I've been so worried about you." Travis waited for his wife's reply. A few seconds went by. "Casey, are you there?" he asked. After listening intently to the static, Casey's voice finally crackled through. "Hey, how are you?" she said quickly. "I hear you're coming home soon? I just wanted to know exactly when so I can have everything ready for you." Travis felt like crying with relief at the sound of his wife's familiar voice. He had been so worried about her, and finally she had called. "I'll be back on Saturday," he said excitedly, "so I'll be there in just a few days." Travis couldn't wait to be back in his wife's arms. He expressed how much he'd missed her, his enthusiasm palpable. Casey responded, her tone far more subdued. She acknowledged his words with a quick assurance that she'd handle the essentials, there would be food, and she'd grab some beer on her way home, before she wished him a good trip and ended the conversation. After they said their goodbyes, Travis had a weird feeling come over him. She didn't say that she loved him or missed him. She sounded very distant, and he sensed that she was very distracted. That night, he could hardly sleep. He was 2 days away from seeing his wife, and he didn't know if she would even be happy to see him. He had been so excited, but hearing his wife's despondence only made him feel uneasy. They hardly spoke for 5 minutes, and he didn't even have a chance to ask her why she hadn't been writing back to him. He had sent countless letters to her, which he poured his heart into, but he had received nothing in return. Something was wrong. He could feel it. And as the day finally arrived for them to board the aircraft back to America, Travis wasn't feeling so excited anymore. While his peers were singing songs and talking non-stop, Travis just sat there thinking about what he would be coming home to. A small part of him was afraid. However, as soon as they landed and Travis felt the cool breeze on his face, he lit up with joy. He was finally home, and he knew his family was waiting for him. He craned his neck over the tarmac, looking at all the soldiers reuniting with their loved ones. And then he heard it. Travis. It was Casey. She was waiting for him. Travis' face lit up in an instant. He didn't think that Casey would be there after the strange phone call, but he was so glad that she was. She ran into his arms as he dropped his bags to catch her. It was something out of a movie. The couple kissed and hugged each other and then made their way home. But Travis had no idea what he was about to discover. When they pulled up the driveway, Travis was so happy to see his house in one piece. It warmed his heart. All he needed now was some food and an ice-cold beer to wash it down. In all honesty, he just wanted to sit down and watch some TV. He just wanted a sense of normalcy back in his life. But was that what he would be getting? He walked over to the refrigerator to grab a cold one while Casey was preparing some food. But as he flung the bottle cap into the trash, he noticed something. There were some discarded fast food boxes in the trash. However, it looked like there were far too many for one person. Travis' hawk eye instincts kicked into gear. Travis couldn't shake the odd feeling that something was off. He decided to investigate further, discreetly making his way to the trash can while Casey was busy in the kitchen. He shifted aside the takeout containers, and his heart sank as he found more evidence: 2 sets of chopsticks, empty noodle containers, and a receipt for a meal for 2. He decided to ask her directly if she had been alone. "Hey Case, did you have anyone over lately? A get-together or a girls' night?" he asked. She turned around and looked at him in confusion, and then replied, "No, not recently. I've been so busy with work that I haven't had time to see anyone." Travis' heart sank. He knew she wasn't telling the truth at that point. Unless she had developed a very big appetite, there were definitely takeout containers for 2 in the trash. His heart was beating so fast now. What was Casey doing behind his back? He was well aware of army wives who chose to move on while their husbands were stationed. Was this the case with them? A dread settled in the pit of Travis's stomach. He couldn't ignore the overwhelming evidence any longer. His instincts, honed on the battlefield, had served him well again. He realized that Casey had not been alone during his year-long deployment. Someone else had probably been sharing their home, their meals, and perhaps even their bed. With trembling hands, Travis tried to make sense of it all. He recalled the strange phone call and Casey's distant behavior. The missing letters that had gone unanswered now seemed like ominous silence. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Travis knew he couldn't confront Casey about his suspicions right away. After all, he had just returned home, and he wanted a peaceful reunion. Instead, he decided to bide his time and observe a little longer. Over the next few days, Travis carefully watched his wife's actions. Casey was affectionate and attentive, as if trying to make up for something, but it only deepened Travis's unease. One evening, he couldn't hold back any longer. He broached the subject gingerly. "Casey, while I was away, did you have anyone else here? I noticed some things that seemed off." Casey's eyes widened and her face paled. She stammered for a moment before finally admitting, "I had a friend over sometimes. It was just for the company, I promise. You were gone for so long, and I was lonely." Travis's heart sank even further. He wanted to believe her, but the evidence in the trash was hard to ignore. "A friend? Just for the company?" Casey began to cry. "Travis, please. It was nothing more than that. I missed you terribly, and I was just trying to cope. I promise there was nothing romantic." The tension between them was palpable. Travis knew he needed to sort through his feelings before they could move forward. He asked for some time to think and left the house, taking a long walk to clear his head. Travis thought about his commitment to his family, his love for Casey, and his duty to his country. It wasn't an easy decision, but he decided he needed more concrete answers. He would hire a private investigator to look into the matter discreetly. The investigation uncovered more than Travis had expected. Casey had indeed been seeing another man while he was away, and their relationship had gone beyond mere companionship. The revelation shattered Travis. He confronted Casey with the evidence and the painful truth, leading to a tearful and heated confrontation. The marriage that had once been the foundation of his life was now crumbling beneath him. In the midst of their emotional turmoil, Travis had to decide whether he could forgive and rebuild the trust that had been broken, or if he would walk away from the life he had once known, facing a future that was uncertain and filled with heartache. At the back of his mind, he knew that if he forgave her, she would do it again once he went back to Iraq. The trust was gone. With a heavy heart, Travis made the difficult decision to end his marriage with Casey. It was a painful and emotional process, but he couldn't ignore the fundamental breach of trust that had occurred during his deployment. The life he had envisioned with Casey had been forever altered, and he knew it was time to move on. As he started the process of separating their lives and shared belongings, Travis leaned on the support of his fellow soldiers, who had become a second family during his time in Iraq. They offered him camaraderie and advice, helping him through this challenging period of his life. Travis's return home, which had initially been filled with hope and anticipation, had taken an unexpected turn. He faced the difficult task of rebuilding his life and finding a way to move forward after the heartbreak and betrayal he had experienced. While his time in Iraq had taught him to be tough, he would need a different kind of strength to navigate the difficult path that lay ahead. In the midst of this turmoil, Travis found solace in the support of his family and friends back home. He channeled his energy into his work, rekindling his sense of duty and patriotism. As he began to heal and rebuild his life, he realized that some wounds ran deep, but time had a way of helping them mend, even if the scars would always remain. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable tale like this one.